without further ado, it is my honor and privilege to be welcoming Amit Mukin, President of IIMpact, for the grand keynote. And Amit, if you can turn on your video. And Madam, welcome to Impact 2021. And Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Naveen, and very good evening, everyone. It is such a delight and an honor. And this is the first time I'm feeling, Kiran, the effect of the pandemic, because I would have loved to do this in person with you. Thank you so much for taking out time for this session. And everybody has been waiting for this, and they've told me that do not consume all the 45 minutes. Leave some to ask some really unfiltered questions from Kiran. So Kiran, I am going to impose a few questions from the audience. Thank you again. For people who know Kiran, this may be a repetition, but I still have to do this. Kiran has been the chairperson of Biocon and Biocon Biologics. It's a billion-dollar enterprise, one of the jewels in pharma in India and globally. Kiran is a pioneering biotech entrepreneur. More than that, she has been a healthcare visionary who truly believes in building the healthcare ecosystem in India. Kiran has championed the cause for philanthropy. She has been a global role model, and she really feels that we need to build equitable access to healthcare through affordable innovation. Biocon was set up in 1978 under her stewardship, and it was an industrial enzymes company, and I'm going to ask Kiran to talk about the journey. But today, Biocon is a truly global, fully integrated, innovation-led an emerging global biopharma enterprise, and it's been working on many chronic conditions, oncology, autoimmune diseases, and other areas. In fact, yesterday, it is such a delight to announce that Biocon Biologics entered into a partnership with Serum Institute of Life Sciences in a deal which values the company in billions of dollars, but more importantly, will build global access to vaccines across the world. Many congratulations, Kiran, for that.
Thank you.
So, Kiran, let me start with a question that takes you back many years. And one of the things I've been very curious about is the journey that switched you from a brewmaster to a life sciences entrepreneur. And would love to hear it, what that was all about and the ambition which your parents had in front of you, and then that led you to this journey.
So Amit, first and foremost, thank you for this fireside chat, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And of course, I'm delighted to answer questions at the end of our conversation. TIE is something that is, very dear to my heart because it's such an important organization in terms of, playing such a vital role in catalyzing entrepreneurship throughout the world. So I must say that this is an outstanding platform for entrepreneurs to interact on. Now, coming to your question, I obviously I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I never planned to start a business of my own. And I had returned to India from Australia as India's first qualified female brewmaster. And I found that, breweries were not ready for a. So I think it was because I didn't get a job that I had an accidental encounter with an Irish biotech entrepreneur who basically said to me, would you like to start a company in India developing enzymes? And I just first, reacted in a kind of quite a surprised way, saying, I don't think I'm the right person because I just don't have the business understanding, experience. I don't have money to invest. And moreover, I've just been told that this is quite a hostile place for women to play any leadership role in business. So I said, that I don't think it was a good idea for me to partner him, but then he didn't give up and he kind of convinced me that, I needed to kind of take it up as a challenge. And that's what I did. So I started Biocon way back in 1978. Literally, it was a garage startup. And of course, I had all of 10,000 rupees in my bank and I thought I could start a business. But of course, I realized that it wasn't that simple. It was going to be tough because banks weren't willing to accept 10,000 rupees in the bank as collateral. And, nobody was willing to even give me a credit line, despite the fact that I thought I had a great idea and I thought I had a great business partner. And it was all about developing enzyme technologies and enzymes for exports. So I realized that it was going to be a journey of building credibility for myself, because in the late 1970s, entrepreneurs in India were basically retired gray-haired men who had just retired from big enterprises, who had a lot of knowledge about what to do and how to do it, and were generally setting up ancillaries for the businesses that they served. And here I was trying to set up a biotech company. Nobody understood what was biotechnology. And as I said, I had no money to offer as collateral, no property to offer as collateral, except my qualification as a scientist. And my idea I thought was very exciting. But those were not the days of tech startups, let's put it that way. It was all about debt financing, and that's why I had to go through all these kind of challenges. But nevertheless, one thing I learned even at that time, when it was so hostile an environment for startups or young entrepreneurs, the one thing I think all entrepreneurs have in common is that they are very passionate about their idea and they want to make a business of it. They keep talking to people and they know that someone will buy the story. And that's what I did. So I kept going from banker to banker, trying to convince them that I had a great idea and they should back me. And so after, many doors were shut on me, finally, I think one brave banker decided to back me. And that's how I started the business. Then, of course, there was a recruitment challenge. No one wanted to work for a woman. And finally, I found two retired tractor mechanics who decided they needed an income and job, and therefore they decided to work for me. And, that's the way I built the business. And then slowly, when I started kind of getting the business somehow, producing products, I then found a lot of young scientists and engineers from IIT and even MIT who realized that I was doing something quite daunting, quite exciting, and something in biotech which nobody had attempted before. And so they were willing to join me. And that is how I started the real business and the real story. Because once you convince intellectual capital, or once you get intellectual capital into your business, I think you have won. And that's what happened. I was able to create that founding team that was really, really smart. And then we didn't look back. So I would say those were my early years. It was tough. It took me, I would say, at least, actually, by the time we really started succeeding, it was almost 10 years into my business. But it started growing or started developing within the first 3 to 4 years. So the first 3 years were really tough. Then it started easing when I had a few people who joined me. And then by the end of the decade, I had a really smart team because I really got a lot of good people to help me in my journey. And that's when we developed really great technologies. And we started really getting to be confident as a small biotech company. So the startup became a small biotech company in about 5 to 6 years. And then we really started feeling that we were now on the path to scaling up.
That's a beautiful journey, Kiran. Thank you so much for sharing this. There's so much I want to ask you, but I'll move forward on the entrepreneurship part that you mentioned. And I fast forward to today, where you have so much that is going on and the choices in front of entrepreneurs is much more, and yet the challenge is so much more in terms of how they be successful because the benchmark has increased. And then on the other side, you have this whole ecosystem of investors and other stakeholders and customers. And I'd love to hear your reaction and your advice, Kiran, at this stage. How do they need to deal with such a dynamic environment? Because what worked for you at that time, obviously, was a challenge was also that you did not have many people who were doing what you were doing, right? But today, it's the problem of plenty for both sides.
But Amit, I still feel that even if it's a crowded space, okay, you have to stand out through differentiation and innovation. And if you don't do that, obviously it's not going to be easy for you to access capital or get, the kind of resources that you want to start building your business. Of course, there are two kinds of models, right? I mean, as an entrepreneur, you can be a very imitative model. So you basically pursue a business that's tried and tested, and you just do more of the same. And those businesses also succeed, but you never stand out. You don't really stand out from the crowd. I mean, you're basically a part of that crowd. I think you'll see that companies that really stand out, that really start making a mark, that start getting valued more than other companies, are those that really differentiate, those that follow a business model that's not a Me Too model, and they've learned how to get then kind of build value. An entrepreneurial journey, Amit, is really about value creation, and value creation obviously happens with differentiation. If you're just one of the many, obviously you get clubbed with everyone and you get valued the same way. But if you differentiate and say, okay, listen, I'm not the same as the others. I've got something very different. I've got something unique, and I've got something which is much more value accretive than others, then I think you basically become a very different kind of an entrepreneur. And that's the path I have always chosen. Challenging the status quo, differentiating. I don't want to be a Me Too. If you don't want to be a Me Too, then that's the opportunity to lead and not follow. And when you lead, obviously it's a much bigger risk. And so your risk appetite as a successful entrepreneur needs to be high. Not everything is going to be predictable. Of course, I would also say that today I have a big problem with VCs investing in life sciences because they are so risk averse. They've got these easy opportunities in the IT sector, investing in very simple business models that are replicable. It's a kind of a fastest finger first kind of a space where the first company like Zomato will obviously be a company that's doing a very simple online food delivery business, but because they're first off the block, they get all the kind of interest. And then you'll have a dime a dozen Zomatos following them. And the VCs feel very comfortable investing in such companies because they feel, okay, this is a business everyone's excited with. It's going to be a large opportunity. The pandemic has shown us that food deliveries are in big demand. So any company who can be smarter or better in food delivery is worth investing in. So it becomes predictable, it becomes short-term returns, and it becomes kind of, simple, easy to understand businesses, and therefore it's low risk. Risk appetite of VCs in our country is very, very low, if I may say so. Okay. I think, unfortunately, in our sector, if you're really doing cutting edge science, the risk is very high. And not only is the risk high because of its unpredictability, it doesn't, just because you pursue a great idea doesn't mean it's going to succeed, especially so in our business. Because, the regulatory requirements of getting anything approved is not certain. The approvability of an idea in IT is much more predictable than in our life sciences area. And then there is a gestational aspect to business, to our kind of sector, where it doesn't take 1 or 2 years to develop and shape an idea, but it takes 5 to 6 years at the very minimum to shape an idea and to get proof of concept and to get a commercial visibility of what your product can do. And nobody wants to invest in such high risk centers or ventures. So I just think that, in our own business, I've seen that. I know that when I got into, I pivoted my business from enzymes to biopharma. I got into biopharma, and it was a very research intensive business that I got into. I know that many VCs were very uncomfortable with a research-led business. And I kept telling them, well, that's what biotech is about. If you are not happy with research, then you shouldn't be looking at this space. But if you're interested in this space, because it is high risk, high reward, you should invest in this. You should at least start understanding the space. I think VCs in India need to invest in high science. They need to understand high science. They need to get people on board who understand high science. It's not a net present value kind of calculation. It is about how to understand the risk, how to understand the opportunity, how to measure and value the kind of products that are being developed or the business that's being shaped. So I just feel that startups in India are aplenty. We have 5,000 startups in the biotech space, most of them struggling to scale up because most of the startups have got seed funding from the government. I must say, I have much more respect for BIRAC, for DST, and many of those kind of government bodies who have invested in startups than any of the VCs who have failed, if I may say so, the biotech sector in India. I mean, today I would say that the US why is it the mecca of biotechnology? It's because VCs have invested in high science. VCs have invested in new ideas in life sciences. VCs are willing to bet on a bold idea which could be very innovative. And yesterday I was doing a fireside chat with Bob Langer, who's one of the best known innovators and inventors in the world. And he is a founder of Moderna. And he was telling me that, look, if we didn't have Moderna in the US, and if we didn't have VCs investing in a company like Moderna, we would have never had an mRNA vaccine today. So you can see that, yes, BioNTech obviously was invested in by a European VC, and it was much smaller in its effort in that sense, but nevertheless, they got funding because of the originality and the novelty of the idea. Moderna got a lot of investment from flagship and other venture firms in the US because they were so besotted with the idea of using an mRNA code to express proteins. And they were developing a number of products like vaccines and cancer drugs. But the moment the pandemic hit, they pivoted to the pandemic vaccine. And so both BioNTech and Moderna, obviously Moderna got more help from VCs in the US and BARDA, whereas I think, BioNTech actually got Pfizer to really make a big time investment in that program. So I think if you look at it, if you didn't bet on an idea like mRNA, you wouldn't have had these vaccines today. And one such bet has created the most valuable company in biotech today. I mean, today Moderna is $100 billion market cap company. It was struggling to just be a few $1 billion before the pandemic. So you can see what happens when you bet on a certain technology and it works. So I know today everyone's going to rush into mRNA, but it took those few bold venture funds to back mRNA technology a decade ago, and today is what you're realizing from those investments. So I think venture funds do need to look at these kind of bold ideas. I know many wonderfully innovative ideas that have come out of Indian scientific efforts, whether it's a lab, a startup emanating from an academic lab, or whether it's just a bunch of people trying to develop a new idea, or whether it's a serial entrepreneur who has been doing things over time. I know that all of them struggle to attract capital, and so they remain stunted, and those ideas remain stunted. So I think that's something which we need to look at. I mean, okay, I've struggled. I know how tough it was to get investment. But I was fortunate of talking to the right people. I know that when I wanted my enzyme technology to be scaled up, no takers, I can tell you that. I had the same problem. There were no takers. But then I got one Mr. Vagul, who was the chairman of ICICI, who was so excited with what I was doing, and he said, I'm going to back you. So, I think you need those kind of people who believe in science, who believe in new technologies, and then they make that bet on you. And of course, once I succeeded, he couldn't stop bragging that he was the one who helped me to become a very successful entrepreneur. And rightly so, I always consider him my mentor. And then, of course, when I started pivoting into recombinant technologies in terms of, biopharmaceuticals, I did have, private equity that was quite excited with what I was doing. But it is a struggle. It's not easy. And of course, along the way, you will have investors criticizing your strategy, telling you that you're taking too much risk, advising you not to take so much risk and betting on risks that they feel you should not be taking. But I always tell entrepreneurs, if you have a very deep sense of business purpose, and if you are very sold on that idea that you're trying to develop, go for it. Don't listen to the naysayers, because they don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand your business. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you've got to know when to stop and when to go on. But I just feel that most entrepreneurs get very nervous too early in the day. And it mostly happens in a country like India, where venture funds don't back you enough.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Kiran. I can't agree more with you. And even if you see the kind of investments that's happened in India, they've been very polarized. And dare say I use the word consumerism more than science has taken place. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, and from a choice perspective, right, there is an entire business you can build based in India, right, catering to the Indian market. And then you have a choice to actually go global. And these are choices which are more real now for entrepreneurs. And you've, of course, built a global enterprise, Kiran. The challenges would have been different then vis-a-vis now. But what would be your take on both of these? And given the way we are in healthcare today, where we are almost building the rails while the train is running, which is the situation here.
So, in healthcare, there are 2 or 3 challenges today. One is that, you are looking at 2-3 aspects of building a healthcare biotech business. IP is a big, aspect of building a successful biotech business. And so when you have IP, is that being valued enough is the big question mark in India. Secondly, I think developing, cutting edge products in healthcare requires rigorous clinical research. I'm not so sure we have those capabilities in India as yet. So most people opt to go to the US or other parts of the world where they are far more developed and where there's far greater expertise in taking a product from the lab to the market than we are in India. I know I've done that several times. I have very, very innovative products, but unfortunately, innovation is not appreciated or valued in a country like India. And so most companies have to then license these molecules to companies in other parts of the world. I've had to license my molecule to a US biotech company. I've had to then spin off one of my very interesting bispecific technologies into a company that's based in Boston, all because I want to raise the right capital, the right team, and to really build the credibility around innovation. Taking a product from India to global markets is very, very challenging, because there is a huge credibility hurdle that you have to overcome. People often say, how credible is this product? But the moment you kind of start developing that product in the US or Europe, and you're able to then meet muster with those kind of regulatory agencies, then obviously you build strong credibility. And that's why when I got into biosimilars, realized that I had to do that. I had to build credibility for the biosimilar programs that we were developing. And we were front runners. Those were early days of biosimilars. Nobody was making those investments in biosimilars like we were making. And obviously, when we got those products approved in the US and Europe, it was a huge win for us because finally people, acknowledged that we had high quality products and that we had really gone through a very, very tough and challenging regulatory terrain to get there. And of course, we had many firsts to our name. And the last one being that we got the first interchangeable label in the world from US FDA for one of our insulin products. So I think, it is not easy to be a global company out of India because you've got to basically play the global game. We still don't have the global ecosystem in India to compete globally. And that's why you're forced to take your programs out of India. But I would like to see India being recognized as a part of the global ecosystem when it comes to innovation.
Touche. Kiran, I know it's fresh off the block, but would love to hear your vision for this partnership on vaccines and how you think it's gonna help this whole situation that is out there, and not only for this pandemic but beyond. I mean, it's opened up an entire new debate on how people need to work through the whole healthcare system on especially immunization and vaccines.
So let me explain the rationale of actually creating this alliance with Serum Institute. So first and foremost, you know that, as a company, we were very focused on products for non-communicable diseases, like every company was focused on up until now. It was about cancer, it was about diabetes, it was about autoimmune diseases. Infectious diseases certainly was not on our radar at all. And then the pandemic came along, and then you saw that every company that had an opportunity to play in the pandemic world did that. AstraZeneca is not a vaccine company, but it decided to quickly pivot into vaccines. J&J is not a vaccine company, and they decided to pivot into vaccines, and so on and so forth. So I think the pandemic changed everyone's thinking about infectious diseases. And it became very apparent that viral pandemics were going to be a serious threat to global health. And that if you were only focused on non-communicable diseases, you were going to miss out on other opportunities. So with that in mind, I think even a company like ours started looking at, shouldn't we look at infectious diseases like viral diseases? And the answer was yes, we should, because these are all adjacencies when it comes to technology. Whether you're making a monoclonal antibody, whether you're making a fusion protein, or whether you're making a vaccine, I think there are a lot of common threads in the manufacturing processes. And so the first thing we did was we actually started looking at how do we get into infectious diseases. And it was very apparent that we had a whole opportunity in just developing antibody cocktails, if you wanted, for fighting the pandemic, as you remember. We actually repurposed one of our antibodies to deal with what they were calling the cytokine release storm that was killing people. So we started using one of our drugs to basically address that particular fatal eventuality. And I must say that we've done a lot, saving thousands of lives. In fact, we've already treated over 50,000 patients with that drug during the second wave and the first wave, and saved many, most lives in terms of who used that drug. And then it came to, everyone was very excited about the Regeneron antibody cocktail in terms of dealing with infections, the COVID-19 infections. And of course, I had an opportunity to partner with another great company in Boston, which was developing a single jab, to deal with neutralizing this COVID-19 virus. And I thought that's a great opportunity. And then we both, I know the founder of the company, and he and I talked, and we thought it's a great opportunity for Biocon to make this antibody and commercialize it in the developing world. And as you very rightly said, Biocon is very focused on, addressing and bringing equitable healthcare through affordable access. And so this made a lot of sense. And that's how we got into that business. And I hope that it's approved very soon and we'll be able to then make the difference to other parts of the world with that particular antibody. And then came along this opportunity to partner with Serum Institute in vaccines. Now, I think, we had been looking at vaccines, but we had been looking at, should it be a green field? Should it be a brown field? And this became a great way of leapfrogging into vaccines in an asset-light model. And both companies realized they could leverage each other's strengths, in R&D, in manufacturing, in biologics. So just as the way I mentioned that we were looking at these antibodies for, COVID-19, many other antibodies are being developed for other viral diseases, those which are not finding good vaccines like dengue, like HIV. And of course, so that became quite interesting for both of us to say, hey, why don't we cross-leverage each other's strengths? And they had a pipeline of antibodies which they wanted to develop for infectious diseases. We have the capabilities, we can do it. And that became a great meeting point. And then, of course, came the vaccines. And then we know that we want to get into next generation vaccines. And I think Biocon has a great track record of high-end research. And Serum said, look, we have a great track record of manufacturing at scale. And can we, come together so that we start researching together, we start manufacturing, and we start commercializing together. And that's what worked. And I think this model that we created is a very unique model because it is coming together of two behemoths in India, one vaccine and one biologics. And that makes it a very unique partnership.
Oh, absolutely, Kiran. And I have no doubt that it will add to addressing some of the needs that are out there. And the beauty of this, Kiran, to me, is that there are two Indian companies who've done this to create a global force, which is really amazing. So congratulations on that again.
Thank you.
Kiran, there are a few questions. I think you've addressed this partly, but let me reframe it from Srividya. She's asking you on how, in a space which is so crowded with startups in healthcare, that you differentiate yourself. And you talked about purpose and clarity of what you want to build. But let me expand Srividya's question on where do you see opportunities in healthcare in India today?
Well, there are opportunities everywhere. I mean, if you look at it, there are so many unmet needs in healthcare. I'll give you some examples. I've been, involved with a large number of startups. There are startups developing biomedical devices, which are very, very cool. Handheld mammograms, devices that can test and do non-interventional diagnostics. There are so many things that, in terms of diagnostics alone, that can be very, very differentiated. I know that, I've supported many diagnostic companies, even in the US, who are doing some really cool, innovative diagnostics. And, one of them is a company called Glimpse Bio, which is, of course, with a drop of blood, you can actually know whether you've got liver fibrosis or liver cancer or whatever it is, because they've got a very interesting technology that you just inject something into a person. And if you have that particular cancer, it shows up by taking a blood test and things like that. I mean, I'm simplifying the diagnostic, but, to the extent that you don't need to take biopsies, you don't need to, make it kind of intrusive. So I think there's a lot of need for developing technologies that are non-invasive, there's so much happening in the area of biosciences that you can develop these kind of diagnostics very, very easily. Then, of course, you've got a lot of AI-based technologies today, which can help you kind of decipher scans very rapidly, You've got new drugs. There's so much happening in bispecifics and cancer. And, cancer itself has such a huge unmet need. If someone could find a treatment for pancreatic cancers or glioblastomas or any of these really, really aggressive cancers, there's a lot of opportunities in that area. And then you've got, of course, many of the infectious diseases that we just talked about. There's lots of opportunities in vaccine platforms. And then you've got a plethora of opportunities in services, in ancillary businesses, and creating the whole ecosystem. I mean, today, that one of the most, everyone's focusing on vaccine companies, but do you know how successful some of the adjuvant companies are? Do you know how successful some of the reusable producers are? Do you know how successful some of the reagent companies are? Do you know how successful some of the resin companies are in terms of downstream processing of biologics or biopharmaceuticals or vaccines? So I just think you need to think about it. And I can tell you that many companies in India, I mean, I just came across a small company the other day that is developing green technologies for chemically synthesized small molecules. And so they're able to replace chemical processes with enzyme processes. Okay. So being an enzyme company right at the start, I know how important these kind of technologies are. And so, there's so much to be done in this area that there's no dearth of ideas. And you can differentiate. And I know many companies that have differentiated, they just need to scale up. If they were not in India, I think they would find money very easily to scale up. I think India is challenging for them, but I'm sure over time they will also find the money.
Absolutely. Kiran, there's a very interesting question from Yugal, who talks about, you mentioned how challenging it is to build credibility. And his question is, how did you work towards building credibility across the entire range of biosimilars and products you have at a global stage? What would be some of the things that people could learn from your experience here?
So, at every step of the way, the credibility challenge has been different. Okay. So in my early years, obviously, my credibility challenge was just to raise capital. And the moment I raised capital, I built some credibility for myself and the business. Then, of course, when I started exporting enzymes, I built huge credibility for our technology, right? And I was the only company exporting enzymes in such a big way. And then when I exited enzymes, I sold it at a huge premium to my biggest international competitor, which was Novozymes. That built much more credibility for our technology, which was totally indigenous. And I got huge value for that. So, the fact that I created patents, the fact that it was a proprietary technology, I think allowed us to really sort of earn a lot of credibility from the global biotech sector in enzymes at that time. And then when we got into biopharma, again, I wanted to differentiate. Even though I got into insulins, I said, I don't want to be a me too insulin. Can we develop our own proprietary platform for insulins? And we did. And today I'm really proud of the fact that we are considered to be the third insulin company in the world with our own platform technology. Novo has its own yeast Saccharomyces platform. Lilly has its own bacterial E. coli platform. And Biocon has its own Pichia yeast platform. So I think to be that differentiated earns credibility. To develop biosimilars for the US and European markets builds credibility, because the moment you get approval, you earn a lot of credibility in having done that. We were the first to get approved by US FDA for 2 and 3 of our biosimilars. And then to earn an interchangeability label, which no other company has done thus far, that earns credibility. So I think you've got to play in the international arena. It's expensive, it's high risk, but you've got to do it. So I think high risk builds, and succeeding by taking high risk does build a lot of credibility. And then obviously differentiation builds a lot of credibility. And then making sure that, you deliver on some of the things that you believe in also builds credibility.
Kiran, when I hear you, And when I sense the deep sense of conviction that you have in everything you've done, I'm sure there would have been some dark hours during this journey. And why I'm raising this question to you is in the last 18 months, as TIE, we came across so many startups and entrepreneurs who were struggling for cash and everything else, right? What are some of the things that kept you going?
Obviously, my life has not been a smooth sailing journey all along. Obviously, we've had some major setbacks along the way. I'll give you one example. When we were scaling up our first homegrown enzyme technology, it didn't work. The scale up had a lot of flaws. So obviously, for almost 3 to 4 months, we did a lot of, re-engineering of the technology. It had to work. I mean, we had made lots of scale up mistakes, but that didn't deter us. And obviously, we had to work with the people who had financed us. If you remember, I told you that I got Mr. Vagul's venture fund to finance us, and I had to talk to them saying, look, this is what venture financing is all about. I mean, you bet on an idea, that idea is going to work, but it doesn't work the first time. Give us a little bit of time, we'll fix it because we know what we're doing. And they were patient. And when it worked big time. I was very successful once it started working. I think endurance is a very, very important part of entrepreneurship. And I think you can't give up that easily. I find many entrepreneurs give up too easily. I think you've got to endure, because if you believe in something and you want to make it work, you've got to stick with it. So I've done that in many of my programs because I know it works and I believe in it. And as you said, you've got to have that conviction that makes it work.
Kiran, we are almost at the end of the 45 minutes that you spared for us, and I'm truly grateful on behalf of TIE and IIM Ahmedabad for you to take out this time. But before I close, Kiran, is there any message you want to leave for the entrepreneurial community? I think you've left enough messages for the VC community, and I'm sure they're going to reflect on what they need to do. But is there anything you want to say before we conclude?
I just want to tell entrepreneurs that this is the most exciting time to start a company. And I think there are a plethora of opportunities. This whole virtual world, this digital world, and the fact that we are now staring many, many healthcare challenges is throwing up a plethora of opportunities. Don't miss them. And don't start going for the tried and tested kind of ideas. I really think this is your time. I really want young startups or young aspiring entrepreneurs to just think of exciting ideas that they could shape and make into very successful businesses. Many of them can be unicorns.
Kiran, thank you so much for sparing time for us. It's been truly inspiring learning about your journey. I took away so many messages. I'm sure the audience took too. Thank you. Have a good evening, Kiran.
Thank you. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you, madam. This was a really inspirational session. And on to the next segment. I'm requesting Shweta to take on. Thanks, Amit, again for that wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen. And thanks for a fantastic session, Ms. Mazumdar Shaw and Amit. As we head towards the end of the evening, I would like to call upon Mr. Jain to give us some closing remarks. Mr. Jain is the Secretary General of the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He is also Chair of the International Generic and Biosimilar Medicines Association for 2021. He is Senior Advisor at Apex Partners, is on the board of many large organizations. He's also visiting faculty at the IIM Ahmedabad. He has served in several leadership positions for over 40 years in the healthcare industry and was formerly the Managing Director of Abbott Healthcare Solutions. Mr. Jain has a strong passion for healthcare and the education sector. He has contributed in shaping the healthcare policy and improving access to healthcare in India. Mr. Jain is the alumnus of St. Stephen's College and IIM Ahmedabad. He's also the alumni representative for the IMA Healthcare SIG and really the driving force behind Impact Health. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you very much, Shweta, and thank you for the very kind words. What a great way to close this event, Impact 2.0, with Fireside Chat by Kiran Mazumdar. And the message have been loud and clear that it is time for Indian entrepreneurs to make a big move. She also quoted the example of Moderna, and who could have imagined around 12 months back that the vaccine can be developed in that short period of time. The world is changing, and it is really changing. I could have never imagined that Moderna market capital goes to around $150 billion, which is higher than GSK market capitalization today. Because mRNA technology, which was brought by Moderna and BioNTech, changed the whole world. So if there's a great idea, there's a great opportunity. And if there's a passion, you can make the difference. Moderna was only $7 billion around 2 years back. They pursued with the technology and they made the difference. I also looked at the tremendous opportunity which COVID has thrown at this time of the time for India. Who could have imagined 1 year back when we had around 18 months back, there have been host of entrepreneurs who have emerged. Ventilators can be produced in this country. Kiran Mazumdar was giving example of Birect. They have promoted host of entrepreneurs. Ventilators can be done. Oxygen supplies have improved now. Diagnostic kits have come in. So all these things which are imported, there's an opportunity and opportunity and opportunity. India is likely to be healthcare hub. And we could see from the panel discussion, which was there by Indian entities. There is Pharmacy, there is Krishna Diagnostics, Indigene making a lot of difference, and there are a lot of IPOs which are underway, Healthium, Amcure. So it is going to be a very great time for Indian startups. It is beginning of the great time as far as Indian startups are concerned. We are getting private equity investments, we are getting IPOs, and this is just the beginning of the big cycle which is going to happen. India offers, according to me, a tremendous advantage in terms of demographics, in terms of technological base, and in terms of science. And as Kiran was rightly highlighting, we will also generate venture capital, high-risk venture capital, which will make a difference. And what will be required is customer centricity, focusing on the problem, and as was highlighted in the panel by Deepti and others, that if you have got a strong idea, there will be multiple solutions and there will be multiple entrepreneurs which will emerge. So great differentiating idea, talent, which will be very, very important. It is not only technology. Technology has to provide the solution. Endurance, that will become a very, very important. These are commonsensical things, but common sense is the most uncommon thing. But right now, there is a lot of environments which is emerging, which will make all the difference. This is Impact 2.0. It has certainly moved to the next level compared to what it was there in 2019. We have today entrepreneurs from all over the speakers from all over the world. We have very diverse set of people who address today. We had academicians, we had consultants, we had established leaders in the industry. We had startups which are in evolved stage, and then we had pitches by young entrepreneurs. Very, very exciting session and a tremendous learning. And on top of it, we have participants, all of you who are committed to healthcare sciences, and we are going to see a lot of things which are happening here. I will like to conclude by saying, first, thanks everyone. I would like to thank particularly Shweta and Naveen, who have played a very important role as far as this thing is concerned, this seminar is concerned. Tai and IIMpact team, alumni, many of them who have joined today as far as the whole event is concerned, and they've played a very important role. With this, I would like to conclude, it is a great time for India, and this event will be a thought starter in building on the entrepreneur energy of this country and take the whole agenda forward as far as healthcare entrepreneurship is concerned. This is a great time, and I will like to say all the very best, and thank you to all who have stayed till this time. It is a great thought starter. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for those wonderful words, Mr. Jain. As we are finally coming down to the absolute end of today, I would like to invite Mr. Anurak Chaudhary to deliver the vote of thanks. A little bit about Anurag. Mr. Chaudhary is the Associate Vice President of Alumni and External Partnerships at the IIM Ahmedabad, and he's responsible for global partnerships, academic and corporate collaboration, strategic initiatives, government and community engagement, and alumni relations. A very vast portfolio he manages. He is a general management strategy and consulting professional across North America, India, Asia Pacific, and the Caribbean. He has worked with foreign heads of states and their teams and advised chief ministers, cabinet ministers, and chief secretaries on developmental systems, policy design, and implementation, and has been a member of high-level committees, including Chief Secretary's Apex Office and the Director General of Police's Empowered Committee. His previous roles include CEO of Vikash Educational Charitable Trust and a Treasury Head of RAIN CII Carbon. He is a graduate of IIM Ahmedabad, Elliott School of International Affairs and School of Business at George Washington University. Anurag, over to you.
Thank you, Shweta. What an amazing session we've had in the past couple of days. We had already set the bar high with the first edition of the Impact Health in 2019. And it gives us great satisfaction that this year we have been able to make it even more valuable for all the stakeholders involved. On behalf of the Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, Healthcare Alumni Special Interest Group, and TiE Mumbai, I want to start by thanking our sponsors, Abbott, Indegene, Amazon Web Services, 9 Unicorns, and Mr. Gautam Narayan of Apex Partners, who has contributed in his personal capacity. I also want to thank our knowledge partners and ecosystem partners, and we are very happy to have so many of them collaborate with us on this. I'm grateful to our outstanding speakers and panelists who include industry professionals, entrepreneurs, and faculty for taking time off their busy schedules and being so generous with their expertise and insights and sharing it with the participants. I'm sure the insights and perspectives they've shared will inform and inspire quite a few initiatives and successes down the line. All of this, of course, wouldn't have been possible without the tireless efforts of the IIMA and TiE teams who have put it all together. To all those participants who joined us for these sessions, thank you. And of course, this is a long road. Massive healthcare challenges persist and may even multiply going forward. And as some of our speakers have also mentioned, healthcare as a sector is one of the top 3 or 4 areas that needs a lot more attention worldwide, and certainly in this part of the world. We will make every effort to bring the best in healthcare thought leadership and ecosystem support to bear on these challenges as part of the IIMA Healthcare Alumni Special Interest Group and through our partnership with TiE Mumbai as part of Impact Health. So stay tuned to that. Some of you may also be interested in the dialogue we've had with industry leaders on industry-government collaboration, emerging digital healthcare scenario, investors' perspective on opportunities in healthcare, Ayush, reimagining the future of healthcare, consumer healthcare, and startup opportunities in the space. All of this is available on the IIMA YouTube channel. We will, of course, continue to add more there and build on it. So once again, on behalf of IIMA Healthcare Alumni Special Interest Group and TiE Mumbai, thanks to everyone who joined us and made this a truly transformational platform. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Anurag. And thank you everyone for joining us over the 2 days. We look forward to Impact 3.0 coming very soon. And if all goes well, I'm sure we're going to make that a physical event. So folks, start booking your tickets to Mumbai next. Thanks again and have a good day, have a good evening and a good year ahead. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon again. Thank you.